So I'm the CEO of Tandem, which is the peak body for mental health carers, so family and friends in mental health.
Thank you. Now you were involved in a panel discussion on consumers and carers.
Yes.
And you talked about the submission you've just recently made to the Royal Commission into Mental Health here in Victoria.
Mm-hmm.
What were your main points from that?
I guess the main points I wanted to make was that we need a purpose-built system, that at the moment we have a system that operates in crisis. So we actually need to create a new fit-for-purpose mental health system that's actually holistic, that it incorporates physical and mental health and well-being, and that it's also not a one-size-fits-all model, that it's actually tailored to people's needs, so whether they be social, cultural. And I think that the other thing that I really wanted to talk about probably was the fact that we have 4 particular platforms that are highlighted in our mental health in our submission to the Royal Commission, and they are that we need a system that's safe for everyone, safe for consumers and also for staff and their families, but particularly for consumers because we have very high rates of seclusion and restraint, and there's been sexual safety issues. Inclusion is really, really important to us, obviously, because families and friends report not being included at all, so not being identified or included in recovery journeys for the person that they support. And they have so much information they can provide to staff and so on that's invaluable in the recovery journey. And then we also talked about fairness. So fair means that all people can access good quality care, holistic care, regardless of the postcode they live in, the regional, if they're in a regional or a metropolitan area, whether they're from a different cultural background, Aboriginal background, marginalised community of any type. And the last one is funded, and by funded we don't just mean throwing money at the same system, but really having targeted funding that's used to provide a contemporary mental health approach. So something a little bit more in keeping with international best practice.
Can you give an example of what that would look like if it could happen?
Sure. Look, there's a lot of models around the world that are being used that are holistic in ways of including family and so on, including open dialogue that was developed in Finland. It's been partially trialled here at the moment, and I think it's being used a little bit at Alfred Headspace, I believe. But it's something that we've only just dipped our toe into, and we really need to look at things like that and other models. There are so many models of family inclusion that are out there and that are shown to work all over the world. But we haven't had any solid investment. There might be pockets of programs happening in one service or another, but certainly nothing comprehensive or consistent across the state.
And there were concerns when the Royal Commission and the commissioners were announced that there wasn't a strong consumer member of that. Have the concerns about that played out in the way that the Commission has been conducting its investigations? How are you feeling about what's been happening and these issues that you've talked about, these pillars that you want included?
Look, I think I can't speak for consumers, but I'm sure Vimya could be happy to speak to you about that. I feel that there was a lot of disappointment, and I would concur that it was a shame that there wasn't a consumer representative, because what we're trying to do is move to a system that's actually designed by those who are most affected by the system, and that means the consumers and those that support them. But I would say that the commissioners seem very open to wanting to hear that many consumers and carers have had the opportunity to give evidence. We supported 127 families to provide written submissions to the Royal Commission. They're very, very powerful statements. I know that VMIAC have been able to do the same for consumers. I hold hope that because the government has called a Royal Commission, that there's a chance, a really good solid chance, that we're going to be able to rebuild a system into something that we're proud of. I don't believe that anybody is comfortable with the system as it currently is. It doesn't support consumers or families or the staff in it at this current moment.
And given we're here at the Mental Health and Ageing Summit, the focus for carers, what are the issues around ageing and mental health for carers particularly?
I think where carers are ageing themselves, it's very, very traumatic for them, because they're finding they're developing their own physical and sometimes mental health issues as a result of the ongoing pressure of being in that role. they're often excluded, so they don't know what to do, how to cope, and they're really worried about what's going to happen when they pass away. So some of them have sold their homes, have cashed in super to buy property for their family members because they felt they had no other choice. And they have ended up in a situation that it's less than ideal. But many people can't do that. So there's that real dilemma of, if the person doesn't qualify for NDIS support, who is going to provide them with that informal support? There may not be other siblings or friends who can step into the breach. And the system relies very heavily on informal care, even though it doesn't acknowledge it. So I think that's a huge problem.
Also, in the aged care sector, where the other Royal Commission is, you were part of a panel that discussed some of those issues. What are the major ones there? And you've talked about your own personal experience around that?
Yeah, I feel like I'm one of the lucky ones because my mother's in residential aged care and has a chronic mental illness. And even though the aged care establishment she's in doesn't specifically address her mental health, it provides her with an environment that addresses her social and emotional needs. It provides her with spiritual support that is very important to her well-being. It's also culturally specific, so she feels comfortable. She can go in and out of English and her language of origin. Things make sense to her. And I've noticed in myself, I think I was surprised at how significant that was in terms of her well-being. So we can often underplay the importance of those basic things. Because she's always had our support and she knows she has our support. But that's not the same as being part of a community where you feel a part of something and all of those needs are sort of taken care of.
Which is your point about fairness, that
Absolutely.
Everybody should have access to that sort of
I believe so, and I think where people are from culturally diverse, Aboriginal background, other marginalised groups, you have to provide tailored supports. We can't do this one-size-fits-all anymore because that's what we're doing at the moment pretty well, and it's not working.
Any takeaways from today that you've heard that have surprised you, worried you, given you hope?
I think all of this gives me hope. This whole discourse gives me hope. I am, buoyed by the fact that we're all talking about the need for the system to be reshaped and designed again, rather than just being tweaked around the edges. And I don't believe that anybody believes that tweaking it around the edges is going to work. So that's a really good thing. I'm really pleased about that. And the other thing I'm pleased about is that people are finally openly seem to be understanding and accepting that informal support is really critical and that the people providing it need to be supported.
Fantastic.
Thanks, Mary.